In our last episode, we covered the monumental figure to not just Abdülmecid, but the Ottoman Empire, Mustafa Reşit Pasha, a diplomat that brought new ideas from Europe to the old empire. Now, in the gardens of the Topkapı Palace, before ministers, ambassadors and clerics, the young sultan would make his mark, not with cannons, not with ships, as was the old way, but with words. This is road to destruction, the world wars. On a cold November morning in 1839, dignitaries gathered beneath the cypresses of the Gülhane Park. The setting was chosen carefully, open, ceremonial, unmistakably imperial. Yet the script was written by Mustafa Reşit Pasha, the reformer who had returned from London and Paris, convinced that only European-style law could save the empire. Abdülmecid, dressed in resplendent robes, read aloud the words that would become known as the Edict of Gülhane. It was nothing less than a promise to remake the empire. Subjects, whether Muslim or Christian, would be equal before the law. Taxes would be regular, not arbitrary. Conscription would be fair. Life, honor, and property would be guaranteed by the state. For a society long accustomed to decree, whim, and privilege, this was a revolution of words. After the edict was read, applause in the gardens was not universal. In the palace, senior statesmen exchanged uneasy looks. Men like Hüsrev Pasha, once Mahmud II's trusted enforcer, muttered that law could not replace command, that equality between Muslims and Christians was not reform, but further betrayal. Some of the ulama, the religious scholars who had outlasted sultans and viziers alike, warned from their pulpits that the edict was nothing but a surrender to the infidel, a violation of the very principles that had once made the Ottomans strong, being further assaulted by the son of Mahmud II. Resistance did not yet break into revolt, but it whispered in corridors and sermons the boy sultan was giving away too much. And while the edict promised justice and prosperity, the empire's treasury was already hollow. Wars with Russia, rebellions in the Balkans, and the catastrophe of Nizip had drained what little reserves Mahmud had left. Reform itself was expensive. New uniforms, new schools, new courts, new salaries for a swelling bureaucracy. Already loans were being discussed, quiet conversations with European bankers who saw in Ottoman fragility not just risk, but an incredible opportunity for gains that weren't just financial but territorial. The Tanzimat was dressed in noble ideals, but beneath its robes lay the first chains of debt. The Europeans, of course, understood this perfectly. To Palmerston in London, a bankrupt Ottoman empire was a compliant one. To Metternich, reforms promised stability without strength, the perfect balance to keep the empire alive but dependent. The boy sultan thought he was winning admiration. In truth, he was tightening the leash. For reformers, the moment was electric. Abdülmecid, scarcely 17, seemed to embody a new vision, an Ottoman sultan as constitutional monarch, a ruler who governed by law rather than command. To his ministers, especially Reşit Pasha, he was the ideal vessel, earnest, believing, unscarred by the cynicism of older rulers, and easy to manipulate. For conservatives, however, the words sounded dangerous. Equality between Muslim and Christian, a bureaucracy governed by statute rather than faith. These were not Ottoman traditions. These were foreign imitations, and foreign eyes were watching. European ambassadors nodded gravely as the words were read, and in their capitals newspapers applauded the proclamation. To Paris and London, the Ottomans had declared themselves civilized, reassurance that Ottoman weakness would not collapse before Britain had secured its sea routes. To Metternich in Vienna, it was proof that the empire might yet be managed into survival. Europe was impressed, but not deceived. This was performance as much as policy. For Abdülmecid, however, the applause mattered. He believed, with the idealism of youth, that if Europe respected the empire would endure. That law could substitute for strength, that words could repair what armies and navies had failed to defend. He mistook recognition for security, the nods of European envoys for shields against European power. The irony was cruel. The Edict of Gülhane promised equality, but in the provinces, Christians and Muslims eyed each other with suspicion. It promised fair taxation, but the treasury remained bankrupt. It promised military reform, but the fleet lay in Egyptian hands. The Sultan proclaimed rights with a flourish, but his empire could not yet enforce them. The world applauded. The empire exhaled. But beneath the cypresses of Gülhane, the Ottoman state had revealed its desperation. Survival now depended on European approval as much as on Ottoman strength. In the next episode, the Tanzimat state, Abdülmecid's dream collides with the stubborn reality of empire. Corruption, debt, and rebellion test whether the Tanzimat was law or simply theatre. This is road to destruction. The world wars.